Let's do it. So I'm going to start with a quiz.
Oh, quiz.
I know everybody looked up. Quizzes don't have to be bad. You know this stuff. So next slide, please. Here's my quiz. There are multiple dimensions of recovery, guiding principles of recovery, and a SAMHSA definition of recovery. There are actually 4 major dimensions of recovery. Can we name them? What are the 4 major dimensions of recovery? If
Purpose.
Anybody...
Oh, sorry.
Yep. Purpose. It's one of them.
Health.
Wait now. Come on now. I think Josh had your hand. So purpose is 1.
Sorry if
What
we were
did you
just
say,
calling,
Josh?
if we were just calling them out. Are we
That's
doing
okay.
one by one?
No, just
home.
Okay.
Health.
Adriana said said community. We're missing one. Elaine, what you have?
I also was gonna say community, home, health, community, purpose.
Okay, what does all of that mean? Home, health, community, purpose. What in the heck does that have to do with recovery? These are just words. Home, health, community, purpose. What does that actually mean as leaders in the work that we do? And you can just throw it out there. Go ahead, Angelina, your hand's up.
Oh, I think that it means that these are the things that people in recovery should, like, these should be our goals, to help people reach their goals, to find purpose, home, health, and community.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Kind of like a foundation, like a starting
Yeah.
point.
Maybe a sense of wholeness.
That's right. Sense of wholeness.
I think we call these like the pillars.
Yep.
So yeah, like a foundation.
It was not long ago, and in some states and some communities in some country, it still is this way, where health was only about mental health when we come into these systems. It was about what happens between our ears and the top of our head. Not realizing, like, we have a whole body out down here, and yet we come into mental health and substance use services, and it's all about our thoughts and our emotions and our feelings. It's not about our physical well-being. And for some of us that are trauma survivors, we may have become very disconnected from our bodies and disembodied in order to survive. So physical health might not even have been in the world that we were living in and surviving from. So that one thing, saying that people deserve to have good health, that's a significant shift. When we're talking about home, it was not long ago that people believed, and some people still believe, that we belong in institutions. Whether the institution is jail and prison or the institution is hospitalization, there is a wave around the country right now to increase the institutionalization of people with mental health and substance use issues and to increase carceral care, right? So what this is saying is people have the right to be in a home, not just housing, not just a housing slot, but a home that feels safe, that feels affirming, that feels comfortable, that is in our community. That's a big pillar. That's why we do a lot of work against institutionalization in the peer community, the peer work. Being in community is a part of that. And that's not just like going to a movie, but actually having a community of your own that you are connected to, and you're respected, and you are loved, and you are honored, and you offer those things in return, is a huge part of recovery. And then, of course, purpose. Do you know the percentage of people around the country that are in public mental health services that are unemployed and on disability benefits? My state is 85.6%. Think about that. If any local community is getting 7, 8, 9% unemployment, everybody is up in arms. Why? Because it's related to crime, it's related to poverty, it's related to survival, right? You have to have a healthy economy. for the whole community in order to survive and thrive. But in our community, our peer community, it's acceptable to have an 85, 86% unemployment rate and push people into disability benefits. Last thing I'll say about the importance of purpose. Any guesses about the percentage of people that get on disability benefits that ever get off? What do you think that percentage, the percentage of people that get on disability benefits that actually get off of disability benefits?
Less than 50%.
Great guess.
Probably very low, maybe like 5 to 10%, I would think.
Ooh, you're going low. Okay, Janet, what do you think?
Yeah, I was gonna say about 10%.
All right, anybody want to go lower? Anybody want to lower. I can hear it.
3?
3%. Get this, less than 1%.
I was gonna say less than 5.
Less than 1%, you guys. I call it the Hotel California. You can check in to disability and poverty anytime you want, but your ass ain't never checking out, right? It keeps us stuck. It keeps us without access to healthcare. It keeps us in subsidized housing. It keeps us in spaces where we can't have the quality of life that home, health, community, and purpose allows us to have. That's why these principles, whether it's the working definition of recovery, the dimensions of recovery, or the 10 guiding principles of recovery, are so critical in our community, right? These do become the pillars and the foundation. So as we're talking about mission, vision, and values, these are some of the things that guide the decisions that we make as leaders. Are they within the scope of who we are? Are they within our values? Are they consistent with our principles? Or are we advocating for things that are actually harmful to our community? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do an activity. Here's my caveat with this activity and this tool. This was written in 2009. The sentiment is relevant, but the language is outdated. So you're going to see words like consumers that we don't usually use, that we don't use anymore. So just keep in mind that this is not an updated tool in terms of language. Second thing I want you to know about this tool, it was designed around those 10 values that Samsa said about recovery: self-determination, individualized, person-directed, empowerment, holistic, nonlinear, strength-based, peer support, respect, responsibility, and hope. The third thing is that this is a tool for organizations to assess how recovery-oriented their agency operates and is. So it was designed for more service providers. So you're going to see treatment language. I will tell you, it's very relevant to peer-run organizations, but I just want to give you that caveat. So here's the activity. We are going to break everybody up into groups, and you're going to see on this assessment, there are multiple sections. These are the sections or the dimensions: welcoming and accessibility, growth orientation, inclusion, emotionally healing environments and relationships, quality of life, community integration, staff morale, and recovery. I don't care which one you choose as a group, but you're going to choose one of these and you're going to go down to that section. So let's make an argument that you are going to do welcoming and accessibility. For every single one of these has multiple indicators. So under welcoming and accessibility, the hours are the first indicator. And what you want to answer within your organization is, have you explored the hours of operation? If you rate yourself exploring, that means that your program is only open from 9 to 5, meaning the accessibility after hours, weekends is not there. If you're emerging, then you're going to say, we keep the program open after hours for crisis situations. If you're a maturing organization, you're going to say, we are regularly flexing our hours to be available when people need it. And if we're an agency that is excelling, we are open when people need us. So our hours are based upon the people that we are supporting, their demographics, and their needs. So that's how you're going to rate it. There are no right or wrong. It's all about reflection. So if you can break off into groups, I know Jesse's going to do that. Pick one section and talk through it as a team of where your agency would score right now around that dimension of recovery.
All right.
Thanks,
bye.
everybody. See you
Thank you.
after. Hey, everybody, welcome back.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I have a quick question. Who has never seen a tool like this before? Either raise your hand or, so never seen like an organizational tool around recovery. Several. Okay, so I will say to you, this is one of so many tools. There are organizational assessment tools of recovery, of being trauma informed, of peerness. There are a bunch of tools out there that are valid and reliable organizational assessment tool. We grabbed this one just because we were talking about the SAMHSA's definition of recovery and the values in the 4 different areas. And this just aligns really well with that. That doesn't mean that this is a tool that you have to use within an organization. You can go out there and explore different organizational assessment tools relative to recovery and trauma and things like that. But I'm glad we were able to introduce this to you though. As we're trying to figure out how does our practices, our environment, our policies, how we operate as a team, how does it align with the 10 values and the 4 dimensions? These tools give us a good sort of external way of doing that self-assessment as an organization. So in saying that, we have several areas that we were able to look at, several dimensions: welcome and accessibility, growth orientation, inclusion, healing environments and relationships, quality of life focus, community integration, and staff morale and recovery. So we'd love to hear from a few of your groups. Which one did you choose and why? And what was your experience? What did you come up with? Oh, Elaine, your hand is up first. Let's do it.
My group nominated me. Thank you, guys.
Beautiful. we like nominatolding.
And
Good.
honestly, we got to talking a lot and we did not get far.
Okay, that's okay.
We chose emotionally healing relationships and environments.
Okay, let me find it.
And in looking at that, I personally thought it leaned more towards mental health than recovery side, but we took it anyway because we are still about emotionally healing relationships and environments. We are definitely into keeping a safe space. So we got to listening first, and we talked about all of our organizations, and we agreed that we're all pretty much in the maturing category. Sometimes it could be excelling depending on the particular relationships. Like I said, for myself, an example is when I have more longer term peers, I'm in the excelling. Like we can joke with each other and, you know, have inside jokes and those kind of things. And something interesting Reggie said, like a lot of his people are just coming from the community, you know, where he's having to do the training. So and I like what he said, they'll just say anything, you know. And so it's working on trying to train them to use the appropriate language in the appropriate time. So overall, though, we decided we're pretty much in the maturing thing. And and Pamela was also in our group, and we found it interesting. On the previous conversation before we started this, we included that because that's what she was saying, really, was using people's words that they use. So if she's dealing with the unhoused population, she's not saying unhoused, she's saying homeless. And it makes perfect sense in that scenario
Context.
to use those words. So we managed to like glance a little bit at the other things. And Arza was also in my group, who is also in my organization, which is also Darren's organization. And we decided we're excelling on all the rest of the things.
Okay, I have 2 questions for you because I'm going to ask you to justify a couple things. Number one, are there words or languages or words or phrases that you do not use in your organization? for your group. Could be for anybody. Are there words or phrases that you as an agency, it's not consistent with recovery, it's not consistent with trauma informed, it's not respectful? What are some of those words and phrases that you as your organization say, no, we don't talk like that here?
Right. Like in our organization, we might not use the term case management. We don't case manage the youth that we work with.
Why?
So,
Why,
yeah.
Reginald? Why?
Right.
Why don't
Well,
you use
because-
case management?
Because that's more of a clinical type term, and
That's right.
we're doing peer support. We're credible messenger mentors, but that's basically peer support. We're doing peer
That's
support.
right.
My office,
That's-
we do peer support. You know what I'm
That's right.
saying?
And case
It's not a
management,
clinical,
case management is a
intervention.
discipline.
Mhm.
It's a profession.
And
Not
as I was
ours.
saying, in our group, a lot of the people that I hired came right from the community. I mean, straight off the street. And so they didn't have any idea of the nomenclature that we use in this field or anything like that. And so number one, I had to model and let them know, no, we don't say that. We don't do it like that. And kind of give them some historical context.
That's
to then
right.
get them trained. Give people trained. So you got to give folks a chance to find out what they don't know.
That's right. I'm not a case. I don't mean to be managed. As a matter of fact, if you're managing, then you're not mutual. Right inherent, the term case management puts you out of that mutual peer support. It's not language that is consistent with who we are. What about some others? What are some words or phrases you do not use in your organization because you know it's inconsistent with peer values or with who you are as an agency?
Treatment plan.
Treatment plans. Why don't you use treatment plans?
Because we use recovery plan because it's not a clinical facility and it's their plan, it's their recovery plan.
Yeah.
And we're not treating them.
That's right. That's right. What about Yolanda? Your hand is up. What do you have?
We use misuse instead of abuse.
Ooh, why do you use substance misuse instead of abuse?
Because we're trying to program our mind and thoughts to not be saying abuse, say misuse, to say we don't want to do it anymore, or the thought of doing it.
Right? Words matter. And what this one little section in this whole document says is that words are important. Thinking about words that have been used to describe us: felon, ex-con, drama king, drama queen, cutter,
Junkie.
schizo, junkie, mental,
Frequent flyer.
system, frequent flyer, crack whore. Yeah, Mike, I saw your face for that one. These are words that have been used to describe us. Every one of us that has shared experience. Non-compliant, all of these words. And these are not words that are meant to say you're surviving or valuing your lived experience. These are words to diminish and demoralize who we are and what we have been through. And so for us as leaders of peer-run organizations, this one thing about listening and language becomes really critical in the work that we do. I can tell the peerness of an organization just by talking to the team members. If I can't tell you from a case manager or an LCAS or a CCAS or an MSW or a clinician, I know that we have strayed in our peer values. And I see it in language. Right? So this one issue is really, really critical. That's why we spend so much time talking about how we talk within organizations. Is there another group? What did you focus on? Thank you so much, Elaine. Voluntold. Yeah, Stormy said those are horrible words. They are horrible words. There are words that I think should be absolutely stricken from human language, like non-compliance and service resistant. Is there another group? Can we ask one more group to be brave enough to share what you focused on? Angelina,
Hmm.
you're
I'll
up.
share.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we didn't really get to some of the questions at the bottom, but we chose to talk about staff morale and
Ooh,
recovery.
it's a good one. Yep.
And we pretty much just all agreed that like leading by example is probably the best way to go about that. I'm always advocating for that, even like with my fellow staff members. You know, I'm always like, hey, you know, like if someone sees you doing that, what are they gonna think? Like, you know, you gotta be the representation of the organization. You can't just be doing whatever because you think that that's okay. You know, so we kind of just so we didn't get to like the questions if we're maturing, excelling, or emerging, those questions, but we did talk about, you know, how the group that I was in, mostly most of the people in that group they're working with youth. So so that in their work and in my work too, it's just very, very, very important to be that example for youth, to be that example for other people in the community. And so we all just agreed that, you know, leading by example is probably the best way to go about doing that.
It's right. We're modeling at all times, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, what are we modeling? What are we modeling? Just like our language question. The words that we use model what we allow and what we expect and how we treat each other and how people within our own communities are treated and referred to, right? And what this list allows us to do is really analyze, what are we modeling? Are we modeling that we are sharing each other's successes and honoring each other's accomplishments? Are we honoring the investment that we have in each other's leaders by actually providing professional development and training? Are we having an open environment where people can criticize the agency, come up with solutions, come up with ideas, creating the vision for the agency? What exactly are we modeling? And under staff morale and recovery, these are just examples of things that you can do a self-assessment for your agency and determine, where are we at with this? And what can we do to bring it maybe to the next level, maybe even several notches? Yeah, Janet.
I so like this conversation because I so agree. One of the words that really just sends me off flying is when people say, my clients, our participants, like people that they serve are in slavery to them or something. I cannot stand when people use that personal pronoun. Number one, they should never ever call them clients because that's clinical. But it's the people that we serve. It's not mutual, and they don't belong to us. Yeah. And that really always gets to me, is that this is not these people. The people that we serve do not belong to us. We have the honor to serve them, and so that one is something that always gets to me. And I correct that so many times, and people say, yeah, and then they turn around and still do it. It's like they still don't get what they're actually saying when they say that.
Yeah, it's infantilizing. My girls, I hear this in substance use female identifying treatment programs. I'm going to take my girls. So you're going to take means that you have the hierarchy and the power. My girls means that you're in possession of these human beings. Girls in of itself is problematic, right? And so that's why we want to do these type of self-reflections. It doesn't mean that any of it is intentionally being done with harm, but you can't have that perception or that perspective as a helper and remain neutral and remain mutual. Let me say that again. We can't do a training around this. I wish we could. I would do an entire training around unpacking this idea of being a helper. And that's where my girls comes from, is I am the helper and you are the recipient of my wisdom. Right off the bat, that creates an uneven hierarchy. right? An imbalance of power. So that's why those words become critical for us to really do our own self-reflection, because it can push us right out of that mutuality. Before you know it, you're the one that has the power. And you're not considering about that imbalance and how it's showing up. So you have this tool. Here's our ask. Use it. Try it out for homework. Think about your agency. You don't have to show it to anybody. So I don't want there to be any risk of, I want you to be as honest as you can. But take this tool and think about it through the lens of your own organization and how you would rate yourself in these areas. It is a great foundation then for improving as a leader. How do we do more staff recognition? How do we provide more emotional support with our team members? How do we mitigate burnout or exhaustion or fatigue within our organization? Yes, Chris.
I just really want to remark briefly on the importance of what you just said, especially for those of us that work adjacent to clinical services. When you have a workforce, a peer workforce, or anyone on your staff that works adjacent to clinical staff, there is the risk of developing clinical language being imported into what they're doing. And it's so important to maintain the linguistic guidelines that you're setting out within your organization in order to maintain the identity that peers are meant to carry into those environments. It's really important. And the other thing is that when we start to do that, we stop doing peer work and we become quote unquote junior counselors or junior clinicians. And it's very, very, it really has to be addressed from the standpoint, if we want to continue to do peerness, this is how we maintain fidelity to the role.
That's right.
And how we generate value for that role.
That's right. That's right. If you're using terms like attention seeking, dramatic, somebody's hustling the system, like those are easy things to take on when you are working adjacent to clinical services. Right? But they are incompatible with a relationship in which we value each other and we see each other as survivors, not as hustlers. Right? So thank you for that, Chris. And thank you all very much for the conversation we started out with, for doing this activity together. You have the tool. I hope you use it. And when we network, we come back to our network, we might come back to that tool and have more conversations about that.
I'm going to add, I think it's critical. And I one of the things that strikes me within this, and I think as we've evolved as an organization too, we're continually working on this. I mean, again, we go back to, we're not perfect. I liked what you said, Janet, about because I hear my peeps from some people too, but the other thing is this, as we talk, it reflects where we're at, as much as how we see people. But I also think there's systemic stuff that we need to look at and consider as we move forward. One of the things I have struggled with, and I want to share this, is recovery wellness plans. We're often required to do a recovery wellness plan. I don't like them. I think and I don't want to, I know someone mentioned it, and I'm not speaking negatively or against what you guys are doing, because we struggled with it. But we're moving towards, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve today? What is your goal today? What do you want? What are we going to do? I mean, going back to that, what is that person looking for or wanting to do? A treatment plan to me becomes a barrier. And I just want to, this is one of my soapboxes, but a recovery wellness plan is just a treatment plan, in my mind, what I've seen, with a new name on it often. We have to go through these 8 dimensions. When I started, we were JCAHO accredited, and we had to go through 8 dimensions of wellness. We had to have people sign off that we didn't want to do it. They didn't want to address that dimension, and it was very, very involved. And I just encourage, this is one example where we have stepped away from doing a structured recovery wellness plan but we do have structure and work with people on working on goals that they want to achieve, whatever that may be. Again, we're evolving and we're working, and some of our partners don't like it. They struggle with it because again, we're coming out of a case management clinical based system where that's what you do. That's how you prove. What's your intervention? You know, how is that billable if you work for, you know, and it leads too much sometimes, I think, of what we're trying to do, or leads us out of our peer role and into, as I think, Chris, you said, a junior case manager. And the other thing that I think when you look at systems and how you know, is how do you report back what you do, or how do you, you know, how is your record keeping? How is, you know, do you do, you know, we've struggled with the case notes idea, you know, calling it case notes as a, you know, peer notes, peer circle. What are you doing? What are you recording? Why so much? And all of these practices leads us to the becoming that role of someone above or beyond the person you're working with. And it's structural, I guess, is what I'm saying. And this to me is why this evaluation is so critical as you go, and to do it often. We don't do it nearly enough, but to have those things set up so that you're looking at where you're at regularly, because it reflects your values and it leads into those values, and it gives you a chance to look at the values of your organization. So I just wanted to reiterate that it just, I think this is extremely important. Part of the reason why we took a little bit of an aside to go into this is because we feel like this is probably foundationally more important than some of the other stuff. We're going to go through some stuff in a few minutes, but this is foundationally more important because you've got to get this to move to the next step, and to have the rest of it set in place. So anyway, I'm sorry, Chris, you wanted to talk.
Yeah, just briefly, going back to the conversation that we were involved in the beginning. I'm sorry I couldn't contribute because we were dealing with an emergency, but I was listening. And one of the things that it's really important for us to recognize too, and this comes from some of my own anecdotal experience doing community activism, is the impact that having a white tower perspective and the expectation of other individuals to adhere to your language style or your culture if they're coming from outside of your agency is really dangerous. That's colonialist. If I go into a Hispanic community and I start insisting in that community, especially with people that I'm working with, or if I'm hiring peers out, that they start using that language immediately, that is definitively paternalistic. And it's something I think needs to be addressed in terms of how programs make demands of the staff, but also of the participants as well, in I guess in comparison to education and inviting. It's the difference between calling someone out and calling someone in to your culture. And so it's vital to understand that, like, if I walk in and I'm just using this as an example, into a community where I'm trying to do some organizing and improving quote unquote material conditions, and I start using all of these activist terms with individuals that live there, none of it's going to land with them. None of it's going to land. And so there is the responsibility to begin to engage with that language and then work toward educating and teaching not just staff, but the people that you're working with. And that comes from a place of cultural humility, and it comes from a place of acceptance that those things are actively working inside of communities that we may not have contact with. That's all I wanted to say about that.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And Shireen, I kind of jumped in, but I want to add one other thing to all of this before we step forward, is we're critical to each other in this process. You know, I'm lucky to have Arza and Elaine, but we also have 30 other people that are critical to this process, or we have 36, I think, total. But it's all of us. It's not one of us. It's not me leading or telling. It's all of us looking at this together. It's all of us. I mean, if we go into this, this should actually be more than your staff. It should be your volunteers. It should be your peers that are working with you. That everybody that's coming into your community, everybody that's a part of it, really should be listened to in this process. And I mean, I think that's critical in terms of when you look at yourself, when you look at your organization, that it's not just you sitting at a desk and checking the boxes. I've been there, I've seen that done. You know, we're in a hurry, we have to fill this out for somebody. We'll check the boxes. What do you think? You know, there's 3 people deciding the condition of the organization. You know, this is everybody. And as big as everybody can be, you know, get there, you know, do whatever you have capacity for. But I encourage you can do it yourself, but also others need to do it too. And you need to be able to listen to them. So, all right, sorry, Shireen, you wanted to say more, so I'm gonna let you jump in.
I did not want to say more. This is all.
Okay.
Now I am putting this over to you.
All right.
I do think there was another hand up though. I thought I saw somebody's hand. Did I miss somebody?
It was my hand that was up, and I just wanted to thank Chris for sharing that, because Chris, that was so true, because I can remember this well-known organization came in to the community that I'm originally from in Houston, which is one of the poorest communities still to this day, with the highest crime rate here in Harris County. So this organization came in with all of this money, and they had millions, and they wanted to do good work. However, their approach did not resonate with the residents of the community. And even though the community could have benefited so much and so well from what they were trying to do, none of the community members wanted to participate. They did not participate, and they did not take advantage of what the organization wanted to provide because of the way they came in and their expectations. And I wish they would have did some groundwork in the community, you know, to get more buy-in from them. It's like nothing for us without us, you know, something like that. They wanted to come in and do it, but they didn't get any input from the people that they wanted to do it for.
Yes, that's that savior thing, Tracy, right? That's why unpacking the idea of being a helper. I'm coming in to give you something that I know you need. I don't need you. I don't even know you. You don't even live here. What are you talking about, right? So when we see each other as helpers, saviors, that's when we can get into some really big trouble around you're pushing onto me your values and your belief systems and what you think I need. Not once did you hear what our community actually wants.
Took it as offensive. They were actually offended by the organization. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that, Chris. It's true.
Like, but Chris is saying we're delivering services to, for, or with people. Yeah. You know, I think that's very important. I'm looking through. Okay. I don't know if there's anything else to read, but all right. We're going to, I mean, this segues into your values, vision, and mission of your organization. And I do think it's important to have some idea of how those things are developed, how those things are structured, and what those are for your organization. And so I don't know, Jesse, can we start the slideshow quickly? We are going to talk a little bit about that, because I do think it's important to have that background. Whatever your role is in the organization that you belong to, you're part of, that you're representing, I think it's critical to know the process. I think it's something that you can be a part of. I actually, quite honestly, I think I'll go back to, I think everyone needs to be part of it. You know, I always worry about those, call them back room in a hurry. We've always got, someone told me once when I started this 9 years ago, myself, you always have too much to do. There's never enough time, and that's okay. It just, that's how things operate often. But we continue to work. We're not perfect, but we continue to do what we need to do. But I think, you know, I do worry when we get so busy, we miss some of the key processes that are important to maintain our identity and to maintain our work. So let me see, where are we? I wanted to start and go back to my pictures and stuff. I want to start with values. You know, we talk about mission, vision, and values, but sorry, you're all over here. Where are you? you all disappeared. Well, there you are. I like to see people as I talk. We talk about values first, and I think we've done a lot of work with values. We've looked at the different types of values, but it's still important for an organization to go through the process of saying, are those important core values that define us? There may be a lot of values, but what are those important core values to define us? Does anyone know some of the values? Does anyone have a value statement that belongs to your organization that you're familiar with? Like, what do you believe some of your organizational values are?
Mutuality.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
We have posters in our recovery center that have our principles listed.
Okay.
And it's about treatment of and working with people that come in.
How many of you know that you have values, a value statement or a list of values that you'll go by? Okay. All right. How often do you visit those values as an organization? Chris, are you raising your hand, or how often do you visit those?
We go through them about once a quarter.
Okay.
And they're integrated into our training and onboarding process. So if somebody new is brought on, we acclimate them to the mission, the vision, and the values of what our program stands for and what we do. And then we get into the rest of the training. But that's like the first thing we do is implement an understanding of what the mission, vision, and values are.
Okay. How, and going on that same kind of that same thread, how do you use your values? If you have a list of values, oh, I see. Adriana, thank you. Go ahead.
It was just to let you know that I have mine in my office on the wall. So
Awesome.
I see them every day.
Awesome. Awesome. I've seen places, I think UT School of Social Work has them in one of the rooms to go in. They have them in big posters. It's a project we're working on. But they can also change. So thank you. How do you guys use them though? How do you all use the values? You know, they can be on your wall, they can be something in your handbook. How can someone give me an example of how they may have used their values? Janet?
Yeah, one of the things, so we're an empowerment group. And so when we facilitate a group, we always do it with an intention, and our intention always encompasses our values. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. Anyone else? Is there a time where you've had to make a tough decision where you've gone back to your values or considered those? And Adriana, I don't know, do you have your hand still up, or are you? Okay, cool. Shauna, did I get that right?
Shanna.
Shanna did twice.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I use my values every day when I'm working with participant, and one of them is our participants lead self-directed lives. And sometimes I have to remind myself of that a lot because that writing reflex kicks in, and I remind myself of that over and over and over again. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Elaine.
Hi, one of our values is fun. And that particular one, believe it or not, I've had to be reminded of, especially in certain situations, like maybe I'm thinking too hard about something or overthinking something is probably a better way to put it. And to be reminded, well, is this going to be fun at all? And I know that sounds silly, but that has really kind of brought me right back to where I needed to be instead of overthinking something. So
It's
that one's actually my favorites.
It's one of my favorite of ours too. So thank you. I think I shouldn't say favorite. I think it's important because it's easy to forget sometimes. Melissa.
I think for anything that any of us do, whether it's at work or home, it's if you're fixing to make a decision, there was that Texas word fixing, but think about whether, how does it reflect your values, or how do your values and principles guide your decision making? And if it doesn't line up with your values or your company's values, then you need to look at it.
I agree. I find for us, it's going back to that when you're having a tough decision, or you're having trouble making a decision, or you're not sure where you should go. Having those values and having the ability to go back to that and saying, okay, what are our values? How does this work with our values? Are we honoring our values? It is extremely helpful, really. It's a tool. It gives me a chance to, and because I know it was developed by our community, and not just me, not just the staff, not just the volunteers, but our community, I know that I'm doing my best to represent the values of our community, not just me personally. And that also that helps, I think, in that process.
Darren, do you have an example? Because I know that you do this regularly. Every time you go to make a difficult decision, there's a lot of people that work in an organization with a lot of opinions. There's a lot of external pressures to do things urgently or do things the way traditional systems do it. And you are a thought leader. So
Yeah.
you're very intentional when you have a difficult decision. Do you have an example of a difficult decision you've all had to make that you did it through the lens of your values?
I think one of them was, we have our community center, and who comes and goes in the community center can change quite often. And this was several years ago, but there were certain behaviors that were disruptive. Some were offensive. Some people weren't feeling welcome. And so we had a discussion about, what are we going to do? How do we address this? How do we address this with dignity of the person who may be having the behavior, whether they are aware or unaware of that behavior? And so how do we continue to keep them included and a part of our community and welcome, but also address something that may be impacting everyone else? And this can come down to comments, clothing, whether someone is showing up under the influence of a substance. And so we sat down and we came up with, for us, community agreements. We didn't call them rules. We called them agreements. That was part of the process too, and saying this is what we are agreeing to in terms of our community. And it addressed some of the stuff that we saw happening. And then again, it wasn't just staff. It was we actually went to our board and our peer council to have them review. And it was an ongoing conversation in terms of, who are we in terms of our values with who comes into the building, how they access services, and how do we determine really what we need to address, when we need to address, and how we address certain things that happen. And so we pretty much stick with the same set of, we've had very few revisions of it. We have addressed it. One of the value issues was there was a tendency to don't do, and making sure that our values and our agreements were what we will do. What are we going to do in the center? So keeping it, wording it positive. And so that really, I think, was one of the ongoing but tougher decisions for us to work through as an organization, and it was developing those community agreements. All right, any questions? Any other comments or thoughts? I would just say the value statements, I'm going to use what's on here. You have it too, but they articulate what's unique about you. They really work, and we've talked about this a lot. They define your culture, and they really talk about the conduct and ethical standards of the organization. It helps you with that process, that those decisions that you need to make, and so they're critical. I'm going to move on. Come on. Okay. I'm going to move on to vision. A vision statement, again, is some organizations have them. Some organizations, it's very obvious what their vision is. Some it's less obvious. Some vision statements are a little bit longer, some are just 4 or 5 words. Who has a vision statement in your organization? Just curious that you know. Anybody willing to share your vision statement? Tracy?
I was trying to eat a donut. I apologize.
No worries, that's important.
So I just updated it after I went through the training materials. And so we updated it to say anchoring hopes and visions, rebuilding futures where recovery defines potential, not limits.
Cool. Awesome.
Ooh,
Great.
that's good.
Janet, I saw your hand up. And then Elaine.
Sorry, couldn't find my mute button. So our vision is a world where people courageously grow and realize their dreams.
Excellent. That's great.
Another good one.
That is. I might have to steal it. Elaine.
I also love that one. Ours is, let me see if I got this right. Build a strong and healthy recovery community. Just that.
Melissa.
Good, simple, concise. Good.
Ours
sorry.
is, you're good. We envision a world where recovery is no longer hidden in the shadows and millions of Americans with mental health and substance use disorders are celebrated and supported.
Definitely. I like that one too. So the vision statement, if you notice about the vision statement, they're usually brief, they're inspiring, you know, and I will just say, I do want to work on ours a little bit. But I think we could be more inspiring. I don't know, Lane, you agree with me, but I that one, and like I say, we have our mistakes or our areas we need to work on, and that's one of them. It's something about how you see the future, the direction and the impact you're going. Oh wait, I keep clicking and I'm not clicking the right button. It answers, what does the organization aspire to do or be? So what? The problem or needs the organization seeks to fulfill. And it's long-term. You know, at the pictures of the horizon, this is not tomorrow. And it's supposed to motivate and energize. It's ambitious. We're not looking to do just one thing. We're looking to really, this is where we get into solve all the world's problems kind of thinking. You know, what do we really want it to be like? What is, you know, I think I had former director used to say, what's your magic wand view of the world? If you could change the world, what would that be? And I think the vision statement gets into that area. It's where do we really want this to happen? What do we want to happen? Where do we want to be long term? And so this is how the vision statements are, excuse me, those basics of the vision statements. I want to share a couple examples of some other organizations. Mental Health America envisions a just, humane, and healthy society in which all people are accorded respect, dignity, and the opportunity to achieve their full potential free from stigma and prejudice. Now that to me is inspiring. That's looking forward. That's big picture. That's really wanting to make a change. United Way. We envision a world where every community is resilient, a resilient one with family-sustaining jobs, good schools, and a healthy environment for all. Faces and Voices of Recovery. We envision a world where the diverse voices of individuals and families affected by addiction are embraced and connected in communities free from discrimination and injustice. So these are, again, they're inspiring. The vision is broad-based. It's looking at what you want to achieve over the long term, that magic wand type of world that you wish was here today and that you want that you hope to impact. Mission statement. I put the thinker on this one. Mission statements are a little different than vision. Missions are a little more concise, and they really outline the organization's purpose, goals, and values. And this comes back to the values. And I went from this direction because I believe you kind of have to develop things from this direction down. You don't necessarily start with your mission statement. You may end with your mission statement. And then back and forth after you get started. But I think mission comes next. And it serves as the foundation of the organization's identity and operations. It really communicates who you are to the community. And so that vision statement or the mission statement can be very important, where the vision statement says, what do you hope would happen? The mission statement is more of what are you doing? You know, what are you doing today? And so it answers the questions, why does your organization exist? Who is impacted? What do you aim to achieve? And how will it be accomplished? What are we doing time? Okay, I'm gonna steps to consider. Have you identified your core values and the principles that guide your actions? You need to make sure of your who's, your target audience. Who are you working with? Who are you serving? What are their needs and expectations? What are you offering and how do you benefit? How do people benefit from what you're doing? How does your community benefit? And we talk products. I struggle with the idea that we provide a product, but sometimes it's okay to think of what we do, I think, as a product too. What are our widgets? They may be hard to define sometimes, but we also have to communicate what we do to people. And so they may not understand. We want people to understand what we do. Be concise, specific, and have a clear statement. It should be simple and direct. And one of the things I think that's important here is avoid jargon. A lot of jargon can get in the way. Not even everyone understands what recovery is. I don't know if anybody else has run into that. They're thinking disaster relief, or they're thinking cancer, or they're thinking something else. And so, how are we defining and putting in our mission statement what we do that's clear to everybody? And review and refine and get feedback. We talk about stakeholders, customers, employees, whatever group you're working with. Make sure that you're getting their input, and they need to be aligned with you on that. And they're a part of your mission, and that's critical. Some examples: Mental Health America. Mental Health America advances the mental health and well-being of people living in the U.S. through public education, research, advocacy, public policy, and direct service. So the who is served here? All people living in the U.S. I think what is next? Yeah, what? What are they doing? Advancing mental health and well-being. They're advancing their mental health and well-being. And how? Through public education, research, advocacy, and public policy and direct service. So they hit all of it. And you might find sometimes the who is universal, or it might be the individual, but all people, that is their goal. So they're very broad-based. United Way. United Way seeks to improve lives by mobilizing the caring power of communities around the world to advance the common good. Who? The world. What would be the what of this? What are they doing? Anyone can shout it out?
Improving lives and advancing.
Improving lives. Yes. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
And advancing the common good.
Exactly. Thank you. And how? Mobilizing the caring power of communities. So that gives you an idea of what they're trying to accomplish, and what their mission is. It's more specific than a vision. So I'm going to run through this a little bit. Our review. We've talked about organization culture. It's a cornerstone of your identity and your functioning. It really it gets into your behaviors, decision making, interactions. your beliefs, your behaviors, your shared values. That's your culture. Your mission. It's clear and concise. It's compelling. It's how you communicate who you are to the community. Your vision, it's brief and inspiring, and it shares really what you see in the future, what you want to do in the future, where are you aiming for, the big picture. And then your values. These are the core principles that guide your organization's culture. And they're really your moral compass. And they set the standards for your organization. And so I know we ran through mission, vision, and value. Well, mission and vision pretty quickly. I think we've talked a lot about values and culture because they're interrelated. And in so much of values is the cornerstone for this. But I wanted you to at least have some exposure to this so that when you end up in discussions or end up in places, or you may be doing it for yourself, you understand. And I would encourage you to take a look at your mission and vision and values and say, does it cover these things? Are we clear? And mission, vision, values change as your organization evolves, as you evolve, as the field evolves. I go back and look at things from 9 years ago when we were talking about abstinence, and we were measuring people's achievement by abstinence, how many days they had not used a substance. We are way beyond that in terms of how we've evolved as an organization. And we look at the world in a very different way than we did 9.5 years ago when I started, and 20 years ago. And so we need to encompass that in how we're communicating this to the community. I did want to talk about one more thing quickly. Oh, not that one. Is ethics and standards. And this gets back to, they are related, because it's, the light path, the dark path, Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, I don't know, dark side. But the decisions we make here, the mission, vision, values go back to ethics and those standards that we use to operate. Do we have a code of ethics? I sent out a code of ethics, a number of things to you that I could find for you to take a look at. But I think it's important to look at your code of ethics. Code of ethics for peer support, code of ethics for organizations. We have a code of ethics for our organization in terms of what our ethics stand for as our organization. But also standards, and the standards, go back to the assessment that Shireen shared with us. Those are standards that you can use to take a look at how your organization conducts its business, how your practices internally, and how your decision-making process works. And so I would encourage you to look at that, look at different ways that you can really, a lot of this is looking at a mirror and seeing who you are and how you impact your community, how you operate as an organization, how you operate your peers, with your peers. I see it as it's a continuous quality improvement, if you want to call it that, in making sure that we are staying current and relevant and true to our values and who we are in the community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. We got 5 minutes. I will apologize for going a little quickly through it, but I do think I would encourage you to look at it some more. But that's a basic structure of it, and should help as you move forward. And I'm always willing to take a phone call. I don't mind it if you want to throw something out. And if I don't know it, I promise you I will work with you. I'm finding somebody who does, or can help guide you in that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And Shireen, is it you?
Yeah, you can come back to me, but I have a question in the last few minutes. Is there a decision that maybe your organizations grapple with that you want to throw out there and really examine through the lens of the values, vision, and mission of what we're talking about with peer support? And we have an example that's it's complicated. It's not that simple. It's not a black or white. It's not a yes or no, but a decision that you've had to really struggle with as an agency. I see everybody thinking. Let me throw out a basic one. Do you kick somebody out of peer support services? Under what circumstances do you say we can no longer serve this person? Do you use a ban list? Angelina.
Thank you. So I know in our organization, there has been a few times when we've had to make decisions to ask someone to step away for a period of time, whether that's a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, something like that. And usually the only time that we do that is when someone's having difficulty and it's a danger to the community. Because we also have to think about the rest of the community. Is it safe for the community to be around this individual? Is it safe for that individual to be here? So things like that. Those decisions are always difficult because we don't want to ask anyone to step away or refrain from coming in. We value community, right? Like that's one of our values. We value community, and when we have to make those tough decisions, it's really hard because we've developed relationships with the community, and so it makes it very difficult when you have to kind of look someone in the face and be like, hey, we think that you need to take some time away to focus on whatever it is that's going on in your life outside of here. So that's always a very difficult position for anyone to be in.
Absolutely. Yeah, Chris.
So the short answer to your question in regard to letting somebody go from peer services is yes. And it is an agonizing decision because you have to evaluate an individual that you're serving and putting them at the center, and at the same time looking at the effect that they have and are having on the rest of the group that surrounds them. Are they doing harm? And are we doing harm by attempting to continue service for this individual? So those are conditions that we have to consider with regard to evaluating and really leveling out. But again, that's not a decision that's made in a vacuum in terms of who's making that decision. People's perspectives are brought in that are serving that individual. We also might broadly speak about it from a larger perspective with a peer council, from like a more anonymized perspective to say, we're dealing with somebody that's dealing with these particular issues, and we want to get your feedback on the best way to move forward. The last result or the last resort, of course, is to sever services, but in some cases it has to be done.
Elaine. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, I'm glad Chris said that too. Like sometimes it just has to happen. For me, it's been more on a one-on-one level instead of center-wise, but I have also been in a position where when I was working at front desk at the center where those things had to happen too. But on the one-on-one, normally I'm finding it's really coming down to, are you wanting to engage? Like I find myself able to, I'm a lot better of not being triggered or things like I was in the beginning when my recovery was still fresh. But now I find I have one peer who wants to use other peers for her to get things done, but that's not engagement. And so You know, I don't want to not serve her, but she's not serving herself. And like in that, my thought was, I feel like I'm just enabling, you know, and I'm not trying to cure or anything, but in some weird way, I just felt like, wow, this feels like enabling if I let her to continue to see me through a third person.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
all I
these
wanna
are not
say.
easy decisions, right? Like they're dilemmas for a reason. There's a reason why we look at our values, our mission, our vision. There's a reason why we look at our code of ethics. If they're simple, we just kick people out. We have these external rules. You don't follow the rule, then you need to leave. Then I'm really concerned, right? Because then we are creating an imposed structure without actually supporting people through whatever their experience, and we're defaulting to just kicking people out. The takeaway from this is really to use the values and the vision and the mission and the history of our movement and all of those things to think through the decisions that you collectively are making as an organization or as a leader. You don't want to do it based on impulse. You don't want to do it based on your own opinion. You don't want to do it based on your own discomfort. This is not personal. It actually is personal. It's personal to our community. It's not personal to us. So we have to take the time and be very intentional about these difficult decisions, and do it through a lens of what we say we are and do what we say and say what we do. And yes, there are times where we have to make some really tough decisions. All right, Janet, and then I think we're done.
Yeah, I want to say, I guess we're just been fortunate, but we've had people who have been barred from the settings that they can no longer get services where they are, and then we've had to get special permission for them to come into the prosumer group. But what we find is when people start acting that way or acting ways that it's disrupting the group, the rest of the people say, hey, we don't do that here. We respect people here. And it's the group that kind of self-corrects. And we have this one participant who can't hear well, and she interrupts a lot and all that kind of stuff. And people go, well, you know, I don't want to come if she's going to be there. And one of the participants called me. He goes, I'm really worried because, and he goes, what can we do about her? And then he goes, wait, what can I do to assist her to be able to be in the meeting better?
That's the shift.
I loved that he in his talking to me about it, he goes, that's the prosumer way, you know, is that what do I need to assist her so that she can hear better, that she is feeling included and all that other kind of stuff. So anyhow, but I guess we've been fortunate. We've been in business 22 years, and we've never had to bar anybody or tell anybody to leave or anything. We've never done that.
Self-reflection, that's really what today is about. So think through it. Look at the organizational cultural assessment. Think through some of the decisions that you're making, you're grappling with as an organization. Look at your values. You know, I find as a peer-run organization, we find more reasons to support people, not to disconnect with people. In saying that, there are times where it becomes unavoidable, but that's not without a lot of intentionality, right? All right, Jesse.
Thanks, Shireen.
You're
And
welcome.
huge thank you to Darren.